This is USVI News, your Virgin Islands connection.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for USVI News. I'm Emily Matson. We begin today with some big news out of Puerto Rico. Former governor of Puerto Rico, Wanda Vasquez, has been arrested. The FBI arrested Vasquez Thursday morning on corruption charges. According to the Washington Post, 2 others were arrested as well. CBS News' David Begnaud posted to Twitter, adding the FBI did confirm the execution of 3 arrest warrants in connection with a corruption probe. The former governor's attorney had recently said she could be arrested soon by the FBI. Vasquez was sworn in as governor in August of 2019 after former Governor Ricardo Rossello stepped down. She served until 2021 after losing to now Governor Pedro Pierluisi. A FEMA administrator makes an in-person assessment this week of the sargassum impact on water production operations on St. Croix. It comes after Governor Albert Bryan Jr. issued a state of emergency a couple of weeks ago because of the unprecedented levels of sargassum seaweed in the U.S. Virgin Islands, particularly on St. Croix. Federal Emergency Management Agency's regional administrator, David Warrington, arrived in the territory on Wednesday to make an in-person assessment and get updates on the impact of the heavy influx of sargassum seaweed and what it is having on the VI Water and Power Authority's water production operations on St. Croix. While water production and capacity has remained at almost normal levels, the joint operation between FEMA, other federal partners, as well as local government agencies and departments is certainly continuing in order to work together to try to mitigate any adverse effects from the seaweed, including ways to contain it, collect, and remove it while not having an adverse effect on the environment. They've also begun talks about longer-term, more permanent solutions to avoid future sargassum issues or impacts on water production from the annual migration of sargassum seaweed into the territory's waters. In the meantime, residents are still being advised to conserve water as much as possible because amid the continuous drought conditions we're dealing with, the seaweed's also causing water shortages because it's blocking and clogging intake screens and filters at the water treatment plant in St. Croix. Leaders say the massive amounts of sargassum is the result of the reality of climate change. Meantime, a team of international scientists say the world needs to start preparing for the possibility of a climate endgame as extreme weather events keep ravaging the planet. Ian Lee reports.
The effects of climate change can be seen all around, from raging wildfires to catastrophic flooding. So far, the conversation has primarily been how to prevent it from getting worse.
Half of humanity is in the danger zone from floods, droughts, extreme storms, and wildfires. No nation is immune.
But now a team of international experts led by Cambridge University says we should be prepared for failure.
Right now, I think we're being naive. We're not looking at the worst case scenarios at all, really.
Researchers warn about what they call the 4 horsemen of the climate endgame: famine, extreme weather, conflict, and disease spread by insects. Scientists are urging world leaders to investigate possible outcomes ranging from a loss of 10% of the global population to eventual human extinction.
The ultimate purpose of this area of study, it's not supposed to be any kind of disaster voyeurism. It's supposed to be about understanding to prevent the worst case.
A worst case climate scientists say we should be ready for if all else fails.
And researchers say with current emissions, within 50 years, 2 billion people could experience an annual average temperature of more than 84 degrees. A record-breaking amount of Virgin Islanders cast their ballot early for early voting in the Democratic primary election. Election day is this Saturday, August 6th. The voting centers will be open from 7 o'clock in the morning until 7 p.m. Tallies show there were more than 4,400 people territory-wide who cast their votes early this election cycle, which broke the 2018 early voting record. There are a total of 54,576 registered voters in the Virgin Islands, and 13% of registered Democrat voters cast their ballots early. The Elections Office is encouraging voters to familiarize themselves with the voting process before Election Day this Saturday. So for a list of candidates, sample ballots, and other election information you may need, you can go to vivote.gov. The Virgin Islands Police Department is clearing the air, saying rumors making the rounds on social media claiming they're using a Stingray device to secretly intercept your cell phone conversations is totally bogus. Apparently, there have been recent claims circulating on Facebook and WhatsApp that the VIPD is using a device called Stingray to track cell phone conversations without a person's knowledge. The department's responding, saying that's simply not true. The commissioner says they don't own, possess, or use any such device. Furthermore, the device operates only on the 2G network, which no longer exists in the Virgin Islands. As travelers return to the skies in droves following a pandemic pause, airlines and airports across the world are grappling to meet demand, but are recession fears and soaring inflation impacting that travel boom as consumers weigh airfare, hotel, and gas prices? Here's a look at why the travel industry appears to be thriving amid a possible economic downturn.
As the peak summer travel season winds down, travel experts say Americans are still spending money on their vacations despite historic inflation and recession fears.
While consumers are starting to pull back on some discretionary spending, some things they don't have to spend money on, it's not holding true for travel.
Several travel industry leaders say demand is still high. Scott Kays, founder of the flight aggregator website Scott's Cheap Flights, points to several factors, including a rise in credit card travel spending.
American Express noted that travel spending was up nearly 150% in the previous quarter.
That's despite fears of an economic downturn on the horizon. Experts blame that on so-called revenge travel, the huge travel boom following years of lost vacations during a pandemic slump. Meanwhile, Airbnb says reservations are soaring. On Tuesday, the company announced a 24% increase in bookings in the 3 months that ended in June compared to the same period in 2019. And when it comes to hitting the road, gas prices are declining. On Wednesday, the U.S. national average price for a gallon of regular gas was $4.16 a gallon, according to AAA. Compared to a month ago, that was $4.81, and experts say cheaper prices are ahead.
While motorists may be incentivized by prices that have been falling, more decreases lie ahead.
On Wednesday, OPEC, the world's oil exporting countries and its allies, agreed to a tiny increase in production next month amid fears that a global recession will hurt demand.
And OPEC says it will produce an additional 100,000 barrels of oil a day in September. So we've heard it before, supply chain issues during the pandemic impacting your goods, and now apparently it's hitting your brew. It's not the hops or the barley in short supply. It's actually carbon dioxide. Carrie Sanders explains.
Beer taps running dry. Not yet, but
if there's going to be a beer shortage, it's going to be a problem.
The problem is to get those bubbles requires CO2. Much of the nation's carbon dioxide used in beer is shipped from Mississippi, where they encountered a recent contamination issue causing shortages. And then a train line strike in the Midwest resulted in CO2 delivery problems.
A dozen or more breweries that are experiencing the same problem, and those are just the ones that I know of. It was as if a switch went off overnight.
At Tarpon River Brewing in Fort Lauderdale, they make up to 300 gallons of craft beer a day. That requires 80 pounds of CO2.
I'm showing about 200 PSI here, giving us another day or two. If we don't receive shipment by Thursday, we're out of luck.
The growing worry, this burp in the CO2 supply chain could slow the flow.
Just checking in and seeing how the supply of CO2 is looking.
It's why they're on the phone here twice a day to check on deliveries.
Yes, we definitely got you covered for the CO2.
A shortage of CO2. Any other concerns?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about what's going on in Ukraine. A lot of grain comes out of Ukraine.
Carbon dioxide is used in beer, but also in water treatment plants, at commercial swimming pools, in soda pop, even by welders. It's mostly a byproduct from the manufacture of ethanol and oil.
So without CO2, what is this?
Flat beer.
And we don't like that in America.
We do not like that in America. Definitely not an American taste. It's something more akin to what you'd find in Europe.
If they don't get the carbon dioxide soon, brewers will be over a barrel.
Oh, geez, let's hope that situation rectifies itself soon.